I'd like to call to order the Wyoming Valley West School District Work Session from Monday, June 19th, 2023 at 2 p.m. Roll call, please. Ready? I'm sorry.
Mr. Pazinski? Mr. Damascus?
Here.
Mr. Hardwick?
Here.
Mr. Keating?
Here.
Mr. Usavage? Mr. Perfetto?
Here.
Mr. Majer? Mrs. Cassatt?
Oh, Jenna wanted me to call her. Yes, she's here. I'm sorry. Janet, could you hear?
I can. Can you hear me?
Okay, Mrs. Cassatt?
Hello?
Roll call, Janet.
Okay. Yes, here.
Mr. Camus?
Here. A moment of silence followed by a salute to our flag, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any statements from interested citizens, please? So number 4, let's discuss the proposed 2023-2024 final budget. Oh, would you want to start or do you want me to?
I can. I mean, I've made some notes just to touch on some things that afternoon. In front of us, we have our 2023-2024 budget in the total amount of $104,677,887.08. Mr. Widiak has it down to the penny. Less our ESSER's money, the ESSER's projects, this budget nets out to $88,069,978.97. The dilemma that we've had, and this is important, is that in 2019 there was a negative budgetary fund balance of $971,838. 2020, that number jumps up to $1,149,491. And 2021, it's negative $594,404. As I mentioned at last week's meeting, the good news is we've been able to swing our fund balance to $5 million from negative $594,404. The bad news is that the facilities around us are aging, crumbling, deteriorated, and there's absolutely no money to engage in the necessary remediation projects and capital projects that need to be done to the school district. Just to give an easy example so everyone can understand is the ESSER's projects that SiteLog is recommending total about $17 million. We have about $14 million in ESSER's funds. So our two capital accounts total $2,796,980, the two accounts that we have. We have a fund balance of $5 million. If you right now take the money out of capital, there's not enough money to pay for just the overage on ESSER's, or you knock your fund balance back to less than $2 million. If I remember reading the reports right, we should probably be carrying a fund balance of somewhere between $8 and $10 million. We're not even close to that. And as I said last week, you know, we can pat ourselves on the back and say that, you know, we've solved the operating budget problem. But if we leave it at that, the reality of it is, as a board, we've done absolutely nothing and I mean nothing, and I could say that with certainty, to do anything to these facilities that so desperately need upgrading and repairs from a capital standpoint. You know, I'm not in a position to explain how we got here, but the fact of the matter is this is where we are. And all we've done is work on the operating side of this, but we've not again begun to touch capital, and the site log report is rather damning when you look at it, that we should be setting aside $3 million a year for 10 years just to, you know, address the deficiencies that are in all of these buildings. It's unrealistic to do that. And, you know, we need to take a good, long, hard look at how we're going to start digging out of this hole to address our capital needs, while at the same time, you know, build a fund balance that's recommended by the Commonwealth that we carry. And like I said, you know, we should be somewhere between $7 and $10 million, more $8 to $10 million in a comfortable range on our fund balance. We have lots of work to do. There's no kidding, there's no doubting about that. I don't know how, and again, I mean, if we pass our budget, no tax increase, our revenues meet our expenditures, and we can move on. But again, when you look at the site log report and you look at our facilities that are actually, and I'm not exaggerating, some of these buildings are actually crumbling. We are not doing anything for the kids or this district if we don't take a look at least infusing some money into this budget for capital. I would never, because it's just not the right thing to do to the people that pay the bills. We have to take them into consideration. Also, I would never look or recommend doing anything like an index tax increase, which is 5.9%. That still doesn't get you your $3 million that site log says you need. But we have to do something. I think somewhere modest, and I mean, I'm only throwing this out there to the board, based on the indexes that Tom prepared, our business manager, for our tax millage, and how that breaks out in today's numbers, and how it projects up to the maximum index number. I think we, and again, this doesn't even come close to doing what we need, but it's something. I would look at somewhere around 2.5%. Our current millage today is 18.03 mils. 2.5% would be 18.48075. In Tom's numbers, and I think Tom did a nice job on this, that would probably bring somewhere in around $779,388, based on the assessed values of real estate that we have today. But you know, I can sit and say, haven't raised property taxes in my real job in over 5 years. I'm not somebody who likes to raise taxes. I'm not a tax and spend guy by any means. But if we're going to climb out of this hole, and climb out of this hole responsibly, we have to do something. I think the only thing I missed, and again, I just made notes, these are my thoughts. A 2.5% tax increase would adjust taxes upward on average by about $41.99 for the average district taxpayer. although I don't like recommending or even discussing anything like this, it's the card that we were dealt. It's the hand we have to play. And if we don't do something today, we are taking, in my view, Wyoming Valley West backwards, because we're meeting our needs to make payroll and turn the lights on, but we're doing nothing to touch property, plant, and equipment if we don't look at something like this. That's all I have to say, Mr. Camus.
Well, thank you, Mr. Keating, and thank you for going into such great depth and in your explanation. I mean, we've been going back and forth on this for a little while. I do have a couple questions, and Mr. Whittiak, maybe you could answer this. The state's recommendation, or the Auditor General's recommendation, isn't that to carry that 8%, minimum of an 8% balance, or a maximum of 8%?
That's maximum of 8%.
But they want you to stay around that 8% on a carryover.
Yeah, I would say so, because when you're below that, they also complain.
So, and Mr. Keating, I know, as we discussed previously at the last Auditor General's report, one of the remarks was this district was not keeping up to the carryover. That was one of the remarks, correct?
Right, but the other thing is, I mean, again, in the past, the district wasn't paying attention to the payroll and just cost in general. You know, last year, we made the tough decision to close Schuyler Avenue School, and a lot of jobs weren't filled because of that closure. And that helped to whittle this real operating budget down into the $88 million range. But we're also faced with, you know, we have a non-favorable debt service structure here. There's you know, a sizable amount of increased debt that we have no ability right now to refund or refinance because interest rates are not in our favor. So to shift gears and you know, what may have been an option at some other point in time to refund and take new money to address some of these capital needs, we can't do that today because the financial markets aren't on our side with that. So you're not left with a lot of choice here, again, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, let's go around the table. Jack, do you have anything to add? Or?
No, but I appreciate the report that you made, Paul, and I'm in agreement with you. We do have to do something.
We do, Jack, and I think we've made a lot of strides in the last couple of years, but not nearly enough. We need to work harder. We need to do more. And just as there were tough decisions made with the Schuyler project, I think, you know, there's going to be tough decisions that need to be made in the future also to really strike a happy chord with operating and capital needs. So I don't see really any other realistic way of doing that other than cutting costs as we move forward. You know, in the world that we live in here in the school arena, you know, you either cut costs or you raise taxes, and we have to find that happy medium where we can cut more costs. We need to continue to do that. There's no doubt about it. We need to cut more costs so that if we do need to raise taxes, we could keep them in the 1%, 2%, no more than 3% range until we get these buildings and facilities to an acceptable standard. And they're nowhere near there right now. And I'd rather be candid and truthful I'm not gonna sugarcoat anything or throw any BS out there when it comes to what's in front of us.
Thank you.
Mr. Hardwick, do you have anything to add?
Boy. Yeah, I'll just brief comment, and then the simple question would be to anybody in the audience, anybody on Zoom, anybody anywhere. Anybody's costs going down in your life? Utilities? Any expenses going down? Likewise in the school district, costs, if we're lucky, they'll stay flat, but reality is they're gonna go up. So in consideration of the increase, it's not all just about the buildings, although that's a biggest part in what Paul's explained and what we all know. Again, how you got here, it really doesn't matter as much as what we're gonna do going forward. I would love to see, and I don't think there's a single person on this stage that wants to ask the public to pony up more money in taxes. I don't want to do it. The question comes down to what's the responsible thing to do with a district that needs a lot of help, especially in the financial area and especially with its properties and buildings. I'd love to see us somehow try to come up with around $1 million at 3%, but if the board agrees and says 2.5% at 780K is and it's a good start, then that's, I guess, what the direction we'll go. But again, just supporting Paul's comments, it's not a time to say what other options are there. It's a time to say, how do we do this option best with the least impact, but the most benefit to the district? So hopefully this will strike some sort of a balance where we can work toward property improvement, structural improvement, building improvement, maintain our budgets and our costs going forward, and keep that, for a lack of better words, that cushion, that that additional fund balance, because it's obviously needed. It needs to be there to handle costs that may come up. So I support doing a tax increase. As Paul said, not to index, but I think we should do as much as we can within the responsibilities of what we can do. That's my spiel.
Thank you, Mr. Hardwick. Mr. Vasquez, do you have something you'd like to add?
Just, and I agree with everything Paul said. We have to, but the only thing I want to remind everybody, and as far as past, that the district did do, we did close down, believe it or not, our schools did, Pringle Street and the Plymouth High, or the elementary were even worse condition than the buildings we had here. When you talk about falling apart, they were falling apart. So we did make a substantial 30 million plus investment at State Street a couple of years ago. And I think that 30 million, that wasn't Esser's or anything, that was from our budget. So that was a big hit. And whether we did it right or not, I'm not sure, but it was even needed back then, and that was a tough decision. So I agree with Paul. I absolutely, we need to continue to invest in our infrastructure, because unfortunately these buildings are old. But it wasn't that we never did anything over the past couple of years. So, but thanks, Paul. I think that's a great way to put it.
Thank you, Brian. And I mean, just something, and Tom would know these numbers better than me. I'm just back of the envelope here. You probably need between 1.3 and 1.4 million dollars a year just to meet your salary increases across the board, I'm guessing. Just by looking at the budget. Would that be an accurate window?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look. I didn't really
And
ever calculate that one.
right, and I mean, I'm just talking, just adding up the salary line items just as close as I can sitting here. You're probably looking at each and every year at minimum, 1.35 north just to meet, that's your wages. It's not your benefits. That's just your wages. So I'm just throwing these things out there because it's that important moving forward when you're talking about capital needs and you're boxed in on your ability to borrow or refund. And, you want to be sensitive to taxes as well. You're after benefits, your numbers probably think closer to $2 million that you need every year before you turn a light switch on or you start a lawnmower up here. You probably need $2 million, just to meet your salary and fringe benefit needs. So, when you're looking at, I threw a number out there, 2.5% at just under 800,000 in revenue. That doesn't even scratch the surface on what your annual increases are in salaries and benefits as we sit here today. I have nothing further, Mr. Camus.
I did want to just point out one thing. When you look at the, how we get reimbursed for this budget. When you look at local revenue, and I'm estimating here about 40 million from local taxes, about 44 from state. And if you take out the ESSERs of about 16, it's roughly about 4 million. So, our budget, from our federal side, which many of these mandates come for us for special education and all that kind of, they're giving us 4% of, less than 4% of the actual money. So I thought that was pretty unique to look at that and think about where our money comes from. State, federal, and local funding, and 95% of it was from state and local funding. So it's difficult, That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Mrs. Cassatt, do you have any comment you'd like to add?
Hello, yes. I'm not a proponent of raising taxes. You guys know that. And I understand, we've been handed a mess, a debacle. It doesn't matter how it started or why we haven't been upkeeping our buildings, but we need to address that going forward. So with all the information presented, and I appreciate you guys researching and doing all your, crossing all your T's and dotting your I's. So unfortunately, yes, I think we need to move forward with a tax increase. So thank you. And sorry I couldn't be there.
Thank you, Ms. Cassatt. For my comment, it's a point of question, actually. Can we earmark these funds just for capital, or is that shooting yourself in the foot? Are we allowed to do that?
Do you mean transferring it to the capital? Or do you mean having it as in the general fund for capital for the projects themselves?
So if we raise the $779,000. Because I agree with everything Mr. Keating explained as our chair of the finance committee. This is going to be an ongoing problem going forward. Can this millage be dedicated or towards our capital project or capital fund?
You could have a line of a transfer into capital projects, but once it goes into capital projects, you have to use it for capital projects.
Okay.
Or you could have it a line like the ESSER projects are, where it's facility improvements, which is within the general fund budget. That's earmarked for projects, but if something else happens, you're able to spend it on any other purpose in the general fund.
Okay. So just for clarity, just because I'm learning actually, you cannot earmark this specific millage, 2.8 or 2.5.
Well, I mean, I could have a line that you said it was 779, is what you said?
Roughly, yes.
There could be a line that's in the transfer section of the budget that's transferred into the capital projects.
Okay.
fund. And then then you can't use it for anything else.
Okay.
So you could really do either way.
And if you did that, Rick, you'd probably want to look at doing that somewhere in the middle of the phase, because most of your taxes come in during rebate.
Yeah, you could do it anytime during the fiscal year. You don't
Right.
have to do it in July. You don't have to
Right.
do it in June. I mean,
Okay.
I would, like you said, I would wait till you have the cushion of the taxes before you actually made that transfer if you wanted to go the transfer route.
Okay. Okay.
I would agree that we would wait and make sure exactly what money is coming in from the state and so forth. But this is exactly, I would like us to be sure we're on the record to saying these dollars that we're asking for should go toward the capital section of our budget. And I understand once you transfer it over, it's transferred, but that's the whole idea behind the state of carrying additional surplus, carrying, we used to use the term reserves that you have if something comes up. And so your general budget and your general operating budget can support changes that are necessary, not having to use capital money. So I'd certainly like to see us pursue the idea and make sure that everyone understands this raise is for the purpose of improving our capital budget, our properties, and our buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Woodiak, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No,
Mr. Tosh, are you good?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Any other board member have any other additional comments that they'd like to express?
Last question. If we went from 2.5 to 3. Didn't bring my charts. Do we know what 3% would be?
3% would equate to roughly $935,265 and $50.38 to the average taxpayer.
So if we looked at a 3% increase, we're instead of $42 per property / per household, you'd be at $50.30. So a $9 additional increase from 2.5 to 3% per household, per property tax. So it's just a good number to keep in mind, to remember.
So I will add this. I will not poll the members, but it seems there was definitely a consensus going around the table that Mr. Keating's recommendation was definitely considered. At this point, I believe we should, unless we wanted to retalk this out through more at a 3%, as Mr. Hardwick suggested. I think we should advertise the 2.5% increase on our website. We can get that out there tomorrow. Does not need to go in the paper. Is that correct, Mr. Messinger? Correct. So
District website.
just district website and posted at district office, correct?
no.
Central.
Sent.
The only thing that has to be advertised is the proposed final budget. Like this, we don't have to advertise anything from now to the final budget.
So we already have an advertisement for a 0% increase.
It's not tied to that. The proposed final budget is the version of the budget in May, and you're required by law to advertise that, but you're not held to anything in that budget. The
S-
Out
propo-
of an
I mean-
abundance of caution, what is the harm in advertising it, though? I mean, there's
I mean,
nothing,
I don't know why we would take steps that aren't required, though. I mean, it seems like it could only backfire on us.
How could it backfire being transparent?
But the timeline was the proposed final budget has to be passed in May.
Cor-
That's what we did. So
Oh.
this version was never, what you want to advertise was never approved.
Correct. So this board, if as per our finance, the committee's recommendation. And my gut feeling, I think I agree with Mr. Keating, we should raise 2.5%.
Mhm.
If we advertise this for the 10-day period that is required by Pennsylvania law
For the meeting.
for approval, we could vote on this and call a special meeting for June 30th.
Right.
And it'll be posted for its 10 days, the legal 10 days,
Mhm.
and we could raise our taxes. to
Right,
This 2.5%.
But I'm just saying you don't have to have any accompanying versions of the budget that show that.
Correct. And if this 2.5% was to fail at the table, we could still pass a budget of 0%, zero increase on June 30th, because it was advertised legally.
But the amount is not tied to the advertisement. You could, on that Friday, you guys could do any number between 0 and 5.9. It doesn't have to.
I don't
be-
know if I agree with that. I think the public has a right to comment on that, Mr. Widiak. I really think
The-
so.
But according to the state's timeline, the only version you have to make available for public inspection is the proposed final budget. And that's the version that's approved in May.
Okay. Well, regardless, I am strongly recommending that we get this 2.5% advertised on our and posted at district office. Do we see a problem with that, Mr. Tosh?
No.
Mr. Widiak, we can get this on our website.
Sure.
No problem getting this on our website?
No.
Okay. Does anybody else have objection to that? Okay, so there it is. Moving on, everybody, Mr. Tosh, and I received an email from SiteLog about an advertisement for our Essers. In front of you, in front of everyone at the table is what that advertisement is to say. So this is all tied to the bidding that is actually, I think, closes today with SiteLog for the final piece of Essers. And that is the meeting that we are having Thursday, the 22nd, to discuss the bid openings. So if we are to vote on SiteLog, because time is of the essence for the Essers project, we would also include this in our June 30th meeting.
And Mr. Camus, this is primarily to achieve the Giza requirements, I
Correct,
think.
correct. Does anybody have a problem if we were to advertise this for the June 30th? This is not an official vote. This is not, the official vote would take place on June 30th. We will be removing 12 p.m. on that. Is the time to be determined yet for when our special meeting will be?
This was,
Yeah, I'd like, because I'm off today, so I'd like to take a look at my outlook when I go back to see what my availability is on that day.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not commit to any time, but we definitely have to have our meeting on the 30th. Does anybody else have a problem with this?
I just have a question. So the notice, this was prepared for us on behalf or by SiteLog, the
Correct,
statement.
correct. It's the,
So I would assume, I know they have their own legal and they deal with this type of stuff all the time. I do just as, I shouldn't assume. I would feel better if Meyer and the solicitors group peeked and said, yep, we're in full agreement.
oh, yes,
Legalese wise.
they have to before we can actually do it.
Yeah, we will review. As soon as possible.
You have about a half hour, right? I'm just kidding. So that being said, if we can get this advertised proper way, Jen. Myra, if you can make any recommendations, please. So we could advertise that. And that's really it.
Rick, I have one question. What time of the day on the 30th are you planning to hold this meeting?
So, full disclosure, I will be in Myrtle Beach. So I will be phoning in.
And
So,
I'll be in Ocean City.
Mr. Keating will be, as vice chair, will be stepping up to the chair. If, so meeting to be set by him, I guess. So whatever Mr. Keating kind of,
I'm hoping we could do like 10 or 11 in the morning. I think I have something going on that afternoon. So I'm hoping mid to late morning.
10 and 11 sounds good.
yes, I mean, it's fine with me. I'm on vacation, so I'll make myself available. Yeah, me in there too. Anything else by anybody?
Nope.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
So I'm
Moved by Mr.
Second.
Keating, second by Mr. Perfetto. Meeting adjourned.